Doogie, Declan Goff, executive producing as he always does, and Zolgad. Doogs, what's up and where would you like to start today on the bonus scoops?
Judd, you are the boss. Good afternoon. So we can start wherever you would like to start. I'm doing okay. I got my first Moderna vaccine, about 2 hours ago, 10:20 this morning, in Brooklyn Center of all places, and it went well. So
good.
I'm feeling okay right now. Knock on whatever. It sounds like maybe it's the second vaccine, not the first vaccine, that could seriously kick my behind. So I've got the second one scheduled for mid-May.
All right, that's excellent news. I want to start with the Minnesota Wild. GM Bill Guerin did nothing, which, by the way, I'm fine with. But I do want to ask about one guy in particular, because a year ago they came close to trading him. And for those who are watching this, I will actually put up a picture of him just to enhance the graphics. Zach Parisi. Did the Wild come close to trading Zach Parisi maybe back to, I don't know, the Isles, who they actually had conversations with and were very close to a deal with last year?
I think once the Islanders traded for those two forwards from New Jersey, about 5, 6, 7 days ago, any chance of Zach Parisi being moved went out the door. Like, they didn't come close. To answer your question, Judd, they did not come even remotely close to moving Parisi, and never got to a point of asking Zach to waive his no trade. But make no mistake about this. If Bill Guerin could trade Zach Parisi, heck, if he could trade Ryan Suter, Bill Guerin would love to do that. But I'm not convinced at all that Ryan is ever going to get to the point of waiving his no trade. Maybe Zach, depending on the location, the circumstances. I wouldn't necessarily rule Zach out from saying no. I think, depending on maybe if the Islanders revisited those talks come the summer or a year from now, or maybe a different organization, that Zach might say yes. Ryan isn't saying yes anytime soon.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Zach and the problem there, Dukes, is that he now looks like a fourth-line player. Like, he doesn't look like, if Suter gave the okay, I think that there are teams that would definitely say veteran defenseman still can play a ton. He's not necessarily showing his age, and I don't know that he will for a while. I'm not saying he's great still, but he's still very effective. I think teams would definitely be in on Suter. On Parisi, I think a year ago when Bill came close to trading him, he was at that point, if I'm not mistaken, leading the team in goal scoring. He was having a pretty damn good year. That's all come undone. So I guess my question now wouldn't be, would Zach approve a trade? I think he would jump at a trade to a contender. My question now would be, what contender would look at Parisi with that contract and say, yeah, that's our guy. Let's definitely pull the trigger.
I'm with you. It would have to be a money for money type trade, right? Where that team is sending back the Wild comparable money, more money. It's hard to believe that anyone would take on more money in a Parisi trade. So I don't think the Wild could benefit that way, taking back less money unless the player is significantly worse. I will say this much, though. That Parisi goal, I forget which game in St. Louis, those two games blended together in some respects. Although, obviously, the one game was so lopsided. But just, everything that took place over the weekend, my memory is a bit jaded. It's a bit thrown off. But the Parisi goal in St. Louis was a classic Parisi goal. So he can still score like that. But I'm with you. In terms of ice time, the minutes he should play. Yeah, he's pretty much a fourth liner at this point with multiple years left in his contract. But the contract does go down year by year, right? You might have the numbers right in front of you or close to you, where
it does go down significantly at the end.
Yeah, they do save some money there in the back end. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Twin scoops. What you got?
Well, I'll be curious to see who the 27th man is for the doubleheader tomorrow. So they will play 2 7-inning games on Wednesday at Target Field. I've heard a lot of good things about the reliever Sean Anderson at CHS Field. So they've played some of these simulated games. I guess it'll depend on how today's game goes. Like if the Twins only need to use, let's say, 2 pitchers, then maybe it's an Alex Kirilloff, or maybe it's a different position player that comes up as the 27th man. But if they need to use 3 or 4 pitchers today, I would imagine, even with the 7-inning games, that they go pitcher tomorrow. So Anderson would be a name that I would keep an eye on. But you have guys like Thorpe, Smeltzer. You have some options, but I've heard good things about Anderson over at CHS Field. And then we would be remiss not talking about the brilliance of Byron Buxton. That price just keeps going up. I'm fixated on what Phil brought up when we talked on Thursday about George Springer signing with the Blue Jays this past winter, 6 years, $150 million at 31 years old. If Buxton plays this thing out, he will be 29 years old after next season. So he can be an unrestricted free agent after the 2022 season. If he plays this thing out, I do think all it takes is one team, right? I do think he would get paid monster money.
Yeah, by the Dodgers, the Yankees possibly. Well, like there are probably slightly fewer than a handful of clubs that would pay him and gamble. And that's where the Twins are sort of stuck here. Do you take that gamble to sign him to the type of contract, Doogie, that you're talking about? Because the back end of that is he doesn't stay healthy. The front end is what we're seeing now. I think a case to be made. Best player in baseball. A case to be made. Right?
Well, I mean, he's certainly, relatively
like
small
this guy
sample
could be the
size,
best
but
player in baseball.
This guy,
or right below Mike Trout, I should say.
Even the outs, like think about, was it the 9th inning or 8th inning? Late in the game on Sunday, it was an out. I think it was the 9th inning. But he hit that ball super hard. Like the exit velocity off the bat was well over 100 miles per hour. So even the outs are hard hit balls. So yes, if he can keep up even 80% of this production, Judd, absolutely top 5-ish player in the game. And you're right. I mean, whether it's the Yankees, the Dodgers, heck, in a couple of years, who knows if the Mets have a center fielder? At some point, the Red Sox are going to spend big again. Yeah, I mean, all it takes is one. Like this past winter, we were wondering, who would spend money? Well, Steve Cohen ends up buying the Mets instead of A-Rod, right? And I'm sure we'll get to A-Rod at some point. And Mark Morey.
We will.
So Steve wanted to spend money, right? He had the money. Forget this pandemic that we're fighting through, right? Steve Cohen wanted to spend money. Look at that Trevor May contract compared to other relievers. Trevor May hit the jackpot. All it takes is one. And so the Blue Jays had all this Rogers communication money to spend, right? The communication business has skyrocketed over the last year with more and more people working from home. So the Blue Jays had all sorts of money to spend. They were in on Trevor Bauer. They were in on some other guys. Those guys said no, but George Springer said yes to the monster money. So, yeah, in all likelihood, winter of 2022. Now, this is presuming that there's not a lengthy lockout, with the labor.
And he's not hurt again. And Buxton doesn't get hurt again.
Won't matter. Yeah, I mean, undoubtedly, the health will matter. That's why, Judd, the Twins, in previous conversations with the Buxton camp, have pushed so hard for at least one team option. And one offer they made, going back years, included 2 team options. They love the team options, even on the Max Kepler extension, the Jorge Polanco extension, the Randy Dobnak extension has 2 team options. The Twins front office is in love with team options. But if you're Buxton and his representation at this point, I think you give the front office, you're not pissed off, but you give them, the subtle middle finger and say, you know what, we'll play this thing out. And we'll take our chances December of 2022 on the open market.
Best guess, if they retain one of Buxton and Berríos, which one do they keep?
Oof. I mean, they've had dialogue, Judd, going back years.
And Berríos, by the way, wants to get paid. Like, Berríos is not fooling around here.
Yeah, and he's represented by the Wasserman folks. They don't mess around. Maybe they don't have the same, sort of, reputation as a Scott Boros, but Joel Wolf and those guys, I'm telling you, they're not in the mood of taking some sort of team friendly offer. So so I don't know. That's a really interesting question. I might lean that the Twins pay the pitcher, that they suck it up and say, okay, Jose Berríos, if he continues the run that he's on, again, very small sample size of 2 starts. But if he continues the run that he is on, that we will pay the arm over the outfielder.
On Kirilloff, he can be called up after Friday without accruing the year to get towards free agency. But he has not played a game yet with the Saints because they don't start until May 4th. I think there's a discussion to be had about Miguel Sano not at this point with the rate he's going being an everyday player, which would open a door for Kirilloff to possibly play some first base. Donaldson comes back and plays third. Arise moves to left. There could be days where it's Sano at first and Kirilloff in left. But do you think that the Twins are going to make a move on Kirilloff to get him up here, or are we going to complete the entire potential charade of he really did need time with the Saints, and so we don't see him until late May?
If I had to wager, Judd, I think it's more the latter, that they want to see him play some games for the Saints. Now, I will tell you, we had a camera over there for workouts on Monday morning. Kirilloff has been getting a ton of work at first base. Not to say that he's not getting some outfield work, but the focus, the main focus, seemingly, we've been over there a couple times, has been Kirilloff getting his work in at first base. So they seemingly are planning for a scenario like that, but I think they want to see Kirilloff take some AAA pitching before they go that route. And I read your column on Sano. I will say he is taking more pitches. The swing doesn't look like way off. Like, I know the numbers are what they are. The numbers are incredibly troubling, even going back well beyond, these 10 games, 9 games, whatever it is here, this early portion of the 2021 season. But I don't think they are quite ready to throw in the towel on Miguel Sano.
And I don't think that they should. What scares me, though, is what you just said is accurate. He's taking more pitches and he's not swinging at terrible pitches, which means he's simply not able to connect with balls that most guys or the majority of guys in the big leagues can. That's what scares me about this. He's actually missing pitches that he shouldn't miss at all. It's not the selection, it's the bat speed. It's what's going on there. I'm just very intrigued. And look, I am all for continuing to play him. I don't think it's fair to him at this point to play him every day, but you have to get this figured out somehow. Now, I will, full geek alert, I will tell you, because at the time this didn't make complete sense, but it does now. And the Twins are not dumb. We know that. Like, they might not do things that we agree with consistently, but they're smart people. So when they started the July training camp before the season started last summer, Doogs, I went to a bunch of the games that they played at Target Field. And because I'm a geek, I kept score. Kirilloff, I went back and looked in my book. Kirilloff basically exclusively in those games played first base. So they wanted to your point about what they're doing in St. Paul now, they wanted to get a long, hard look, and they do, with him playing first, which makes a ton of sense. But that could be a way to almost put Sano into a platoon.
Well, it could, but at some point you need to be thinking long-term about the DH spot, Josh Donaldson occupying the DH spot, Nelson Cruz not being here. Who then occupies third base? Plus, Donaldson is not, immediately here. Like, Donaldson's ready to go, but I'm not quite sure we'll see him the next few days just with the cold weather. We may not see him until the road trip out west. And I think in the end, like, Josh Donaldson, how many games do you think Josh plays this year? I think on the aggressive guess side, 140? Like, I'm not even quite sure it'll be 140.
Super aggressive guess right there.
Well, I think you're right. Presuming that he's not shut down at any point the rest of the way, that he's healthy the rest of the way, that they just decide, 1 or 2 days a week to just keep him out of the starting lineup. Now, he may, if they need him late in the game, a pinch hitting opportunity, 8th inning of a close game, I could see, them saying, hey, go for it. And if they need to bring in a pinch runner thereafter, just to minimize him having to run, if it's a base hit, hopefully he doesn't, have to run second, third, and home, they can bring in the pinch runner. They can strategize that way. But yeah, 140 is probably really aggressive at this moment, considering he's already missed whatever it is here, 9-10 games. If he doesn't play, he's not in the starting lineup today. Let's say he doesn't play in either game tomorrow, that they don't activate him, that they wait until the weekend to activate him. He's already down, whatever that is, 12 or 13 games. So yeah, out of 162, 140 would be uber aggressive.
This sounds bad, but I think that for 2021, you have to consider what you can get from him almost gravy. Because I think it's ridiculous to assume that he is going to stay healthy. I mean, these problems, as we've discussed a lot before, Doogie, but these problems are chronic problems, like chronic calf problem. Or the hamstring is a result of trying to change how he runs to protect the calf. So we're not talking about, well, he had ACL surgery and now he's fine and it probably won't come back to bite him again. So hate to say it, but at this point in time, I consider what he does to be a nice bonus possibly. But if I'm the Twins, I'm certainly not counting on it.
Well, I mean, that's a really sad statement, Judd, considering he's in year 2 of a 4-year, $92 million contract. He's not the only injury concern. I mean, I think for the next few weeks, we need to keep an eye on Jorge Polanco coming off the ankle surgery. Let's not forget Louis Arise. I mean, Arise battled COVID in the offseason. He battled an injury last year, so he's an injury concern.
Yep.
Buxton clearly is an injury concern. So they have more than Donaldson.
Are you full of good news?
Every time Nelson Cruz swings, you just, at times, I think you cringe just at his age, even though he continues just to defy all logic, producing the way he's producing at nearly 41 years old. He'll turn 41 in July? But you have to always think every time he takes a swing that something could happen. So, yeah, they certainly have a few question marks. That's for April. I think if when the calendar flips to May, if those guys are in a good spot after 30 to 35 games,
yep,
that'll minimize my concern.
Buxton, I will always be concerned about. There's no question about that one. All right, we're halfway through the show, so I think that we should take the rest of the show today and talk about the news that came out Saturday night from the Wolves, which, by the way, I had to read that tweet like 3 times to be like, Alex Rodriguez, Timberwolves, Glenn Taylor, what the hell is going on here? The floor is yours to explain anything that you want about the news that A-Rod and his tech friend from Walmart, e-commerce guy who is a billionaire, have an agreement to buy the Wolves, but Glenn's going to have like a 2-year period to show them the ropes. Doogie, it's all yours. Take over.
I've been saying for a while, Judd, going back to probably when Daniel E. Strauss was in town in August, that it felt more real than ever. All right? So that goes back about 7 or 8 months. And here we are. Never, though, in a million years did I think just about every detail of a $1.5 billion transaction would take place over the course of about 7 days. That Glenn Taylor told me. We talked for about 25 minutes on Saturday night, some on mic, some off mic. I can't believe how fast all this happened. We have to only go back about 10 days. So we're sitting here on the afternoon of April 13th. It was this month. It wasn't even March. It was April 1st or April 2nd. And if it was April 1st, it wasn't an April Fool's joke that Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry approached Glenn Taylor. A meeting took place soon thereafter at Glenn's residence in Naples, Florida. Everything happened super fast. And everything is pretty much in place. Sure, it's the old, some T's to cross, some I's to dot. But pretty much everything has been agreed to. Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry were in town on Monday. They met with Cheryl Reeve. They met with Gerson Rosas. They were able to meet with some Wolves players. They took a tour of Mayo Clinic Square, of Target Center. The plan was for them to be here for the Wolves-Nets game that was postponed until this afternoon at 3 o'clock. But yeah, I mean, that's how fast everything moved, that those guys have already been in town. So yeah, A-Rod and Mark Lowry come roughly 2023, although that's a rough timeline. Like, I think if they're in a position where they feel comfortable and it's 2022, that they'll go to Glenn and say, okay, we're ready. Now, Glenn told me he is going to remain involved. Now, when I say that, like 15% ownership or 18% or 20%.
Calvin said the same thing.
Yeah, that Glenn is still going to end up keeping some portion of the team. But yeah, at some point, the plan right now, but I think it's fluid, but the plan right now is at some point here in about 2.5 years, mid to late 2023, that A-Rod and Mark Lowry will take over as majority owners. It's been told to me that it's pretty much a 50-50 split. That, yeah, I mean, Mark Lowry is a billionaire. I mean, he sold a company to Amazon not that long ago for nearly $600 million. Now, Mark Lowry has more money than A-Rod, but the partnership between A-Rod and Lowry is about 50-50.
All right, what does this mean? If you're a Wolves fan, give me the good and potentially bad of what this means.
Well, I think the good is, like, the Wolves are a bottom-feeding franchise, right? Flyover country, even though this is a pretty big media market. We're a top 15 media market. Yep. But in many ways, I think a lot of people, the perception, and right or wrong, just a lot of people nationwide view Minnesota as flyover country. They now have a celebrity owner. For good and for bad, there will be more of a spotlight on the Wolves because of Alex Rodriguez. The bad, I think it's inevitable that minimum Lowry and A-Rod eventually push for a new arena. The Target Center is a bottom 5 arena. I talked to Brian Windhorst of ESPN on a recent Scoop podcast, maybe going back a few weeks. We laid all this out. Windy has been to just about every arena. All right, he's got the book on all these facilities. He ranks Target Center, if not 29th or 30th, 28th, 27th. Like, I don't think anybody can debate. It is a bottom 5 arena. So at some point, A-Rod and Lowry are going to fight for a new arena. What then happens? It's hard for me to see them, privately funding. We went back and forth on this via text message. Judd, I'm with you. You brought this up initially. I side with you on this, that it's one thing if you're in San Francisco with the Golden State Warriors to privately fund an arena. It's hard for me to believe that A-Rod and Lowry would privately fund an arena in Minneapolis or Bloomington or St. Paul, somewhere here in the metropolitan area. So they would need all sorts of government support, public funding. So how will that situation play out? On the expansion question, because I get it. Like, I was with Ellerson Smith yesterday. He's a Minneapolis kid, went to South High School. He's an NFL draft prospect from Northern Iowa. He's a big Wolves fan. So we ended up in between some of his sets. He just had all these Wolves questions for me. Mm-hmm. He has all sorts of fear about the potential of the Wolves moving to Seattle or Vegas. Mm-hmm. I think Seattle and Vegas are getting teams. But, Judd, I think it makes too much sense. Commissioner Silver even hinted at this a few months back. It makes too much sense to not go the route of awarding those cities expansion franchises. That, we can put lost in air quotes, but all these owners have missed out on a lot of different revenue streams through the pandemic, going back 13 months or so, right?
Yep.
I think the expansion fee money is a way for these owners to recoup a lot of that lost revenue. That they'll go, the NBA will go from 30 franchises to 32 franchises, but it'll be via expansion, not the Wolves moving anywhere. And oh, by the way, and I'm speaking as if it's going to happen, when not if, I think the Wolves will continue to fight to move to the Eastern Conference. That if Seattle and Vegas come in, you put those two franchises in the Western Conference. And,
they should fight for that.
Yeah, two franchises would move to the Eastern Conference. Minnesota's been trying to fight for that for a while.
I got a tweet from a guy about that, though, the expansion question, and it was interesting, and I've not seen this story, but it sounds plausible. Mark Cuban and a group are fighting expansion because ultimately, while they would gain to benefit immediately from the influx of cash from those teams, they don't want to split the pie up more. So, like, his point is, yeah, I get a check, which is great, but then I got to split the pie long term, which I don't want to do. I found that to be interesting. Let me give you, because Dukes, this is the play-by-play of Norm Green and the North Stars. Let me give you the expansion conundrum problem here, okay? Redundant, but the conundrum is this. Norm Green, his original goal, and by the way, if Norm had gotten an arena, he would have stayed, okay? So, like, Yes, there were things going on outside of that. But if Norm had been given the improvements to the Met that he wanted and they had built the Skyway to the mall, which I believe was going to include a casino, Norm Green and the North Star stay, and the Wild is not here, and St. Paul does not have that building, or at least not yet. So anyway, the issue is that when Norm started to look to move, his original goal was Anaheim, California. And this was at the time that the Mighty Ducks had been released. And the league's like, no, Disney wants a team because of the film. We're going to put a team there as an expansion team. But if you don't get what you want in the Twin Cities, we're going to give you the right to move anywhere else. So my fear, and look, I'll be very clear here. If we pony up and build another arena, the Wolves will stay. Like, they will stay. The league will make them stay. But the long game here is if we're like, we just built, and we're not wrong, we just built all of these buildings, and these guys got improvements, which was stupid, to Target Center. We are not going to build you. No, we're not going to spend another dime. That's where you get the problem of Silver having to come back and say, all right, if you guys can pick another place to go and they won't build you what you want, we're not going to stop you. And Royce threw out a scenario that was interesting. The new Islanders building, which I think is in Elmont, New York, right by the Belmont racetrack, as a possibility. And can you imagine Kat going home to the New York area? I'm not trying to scare people. I'm just saying, I'm sports dad. I'm old. I've seen this before. I've seen this film. There are elements to this film that are going to be, I think, amazingly similar, including at first, A-Rod's going to be loved. A-Rod, courtside. This is how this plays out, though. This is how this starts. That's what worries me.
And your reason for worrying, Judd, is fair. I think it's fine, right? Like, A-Rod, what's his other nickname? A-Fraud, right? There's a lot of skepticism about Alex Rodriguez. Just taking the temperature of some people the last handful of days on Alex Rodriguez, the feedback has not been all positive. So I understand everything you just said. The Islanders arena is interesting. I hadn't thought of that idea. Now, Mark Cuban putting up, a fight, that's fine. I get it. Like, whenever the national TV deal is up and they need to renegotiate and that pie is divvied up, I get it that you want 1/30th of that pie, not 1/32nd of that pie. But there can be some dissenting votes, right? But I think there would be enough. I do. I think there would be enough owners that say, you know what, for the long-term viability and health of our league, going to 32 franchises is not a bad thing. The overall talent, the basketball level of talent right now might be better than ever. Like, there are a lot of good players that, in my mind, are NBA level players that don't have an NBA job right now. That there's just not enough jobs to be had. So they're playing overseas or playing in the G League, but they're good enough. So I think that's what's going to happen. Could I be proven wrong? 100%. I'm not suggesting all this with all sorts of reporting backing on this. It's more a gut feeling based on what Adam Silver said in December, and just looking at the financial landscape. But I completely get it, and I'm telling you, when you negotiate a transaction of this magnitude in 1 week, there should be all sorts of skepticism. Like, Glenn has been trying, Judd. Glenn has been trying for over 6 years. Like, to use the football analogy or the football cliche, like with Steve Kaplan back in 2015, he was on the 3-yard line. With Daniel Lee Strauss in August, he was on the 2 or 1 yard line.
Yep.
Then he got cold feet. There's still people that wonder, even with Glenn volunteering, hey, this thing is going to happen. This 30-day exclusive negotiating window, it's a mere formality. That everything's been negotiated. There's still people that are close to Glenn that say, I still don't really know if he really wants to do this. That does he really, really want to do this?
And I'm curious about that too. But Doogie, in the last 4 months, there are 2 things that I've heard that made me stop and say, Okay? The first one was Josh Donaldson saying, I found a new way to run now to help my calves. That never works. Covered that story before, okay? I said, he's going to get hurt. I did not think he'd get hurt in his first at bat, but he did get hurt. Okay. The second thing I read this weekend was the whole move thing and what did A-Rod and billionaire Buddy tell you? And Glenn's like, yeah, they were at my house in Naples and Becky made, I think, apple pie or something, and they said there'd be no problems. Again, to your point, he's known as A-Fraud. And, I mean, he's a businessman. So if he was known, I don't care what his name is. I don't care what his reputation is. Business people, like, Dukes, you know this. We've covered these stories. Guys like A-Rod and Lori their life is based on being litigious, right? So, like, I can tell you right now, Doogie, you're my best friend in the world. I think you're the greatest guy. And then go stab you right in the back. And if you sue me, I'll sue you back, and we'll go back and forth in court. So anyway, when Glenn said that, and again, you're right. It took a week. I can't tell you how much I said, oh, this is a bad start. He looked me in the eye. It's Wiggins-like. He looked me in the eye.
I know. I understand it. And, Judd, we get lied to all the time. Right? Like, yes. Mike Zimmer, Daniil Hunter, tweak. Like, we can cite, I mean, you and I have been doing this in this market for multiple decades. We can cite any number of examples going back any number of years. We get lied to all the time. I just still struggle with, if I do believe that expansion is coming, and that's where Vegas and Seattle get their franchises, that really, where do they move? And I get the Royce Islanders idea. I still think a third NBA team in the New York metropolitan area, if we want to extend out to Long Island, like, you would get lost in the shuffle. Now, maybe there would be some pretty good revenue streams, but I just think you'd really get lost. Pittsburgh, does Pittsburgh do anything for anybody? I don't think so. Louisville, I mean, they have the arena, but probably
they've got the arena. No,
like, but Tampa, like, A-Rod loves Florida, but Orlando is still close.
I thought of that one too,
but
Dukes,
Tampa,
right? But Dukes, this would take time. Like I'm not saying he's going to buy the team. In fact, I think he's going to be popular here. Like, I think it's going to get off to the Norm Green start. A-Rod. I think all of those things are going.
I agree.
I'm not suggesting that they're going to get bought and moved by any means. I think we're going to start off, but what they're going to do is they're going to get popular and people are going to like them, and it might even become the in thing to be at. And that's when they're going to drop this building really is not sufficient. And that's how it starts. It never, like, it always starts as a snowball, right? It starts as a snowball, and then it picks up momentum.
And everybody says the right things from the get-go. Like, think about did he end up selling the Oklahoma City Thunder after he moved them from Seattle? Clay, is it Bennett? I don't know if he's still the
Starbucks
majority
guy,
owner.
right? The Starbucks guy.
Yeah, he bought him to be moved. Yeah, from Schultz, right? The Starbucks guy. But I don't know if Clay Bennett, I think it's Bennett. I don't know if Clay Bennett is still the majority owner of the Thunder or not. I suppose you could Google that real quick. But anyway, go back and read some of the quotes from him when he bought the Seattle Supersonics.
Yes.
There was reason to believe, hey, this team isn't going anywhere. So, yeah, I mean, you can bring up Norm Green. I'll bring up, Seattle moving to Oklahoma City. There's any number of examples.
It just worries me that
I get it. The tentacles need to be up, and when it's Glenn and all this happened in a week,
yes,
I completely understand. That's why I think it'll come down to what takes place with the new arena, the Target Center, even over the next, 8 to 10 years. Like, they can't keep rolling with the Target Center. The renovation.
Why? Why did they do that?
That was the old lipstick on a pig.
Right, but why?
Alexis Club is nice. The suites are nice. But for the conventional fan, there really isn't a noticeable difference. Maybe the seats were redone, but
Doogie, there's still more seats upstairs than down.
There's not a big difference. Yeah.
Do you know what you do?
It's not a viable long-term arena. It's not.
Do you know what?
Come to the point, it's not.
What you do with an arena in 2021 that has more seats upstairs than down? You implode it, and it's a really cool internet thing to watch. but you implode it. Like, who walked into that and like, all we need is renovations? And I believe it's been redone twice now, okay? It's the only building left from that late 80s, early 90s. Bradley Center did one, Miami did one, Orlando did one, I think Charlotte. It's the only one left. And for them to have redone it and wasted, and I know that they had some more cash in the slush fund to do this, was ridiculous. But anyway, yeah, this is going to be, and there's going to be a whole, and I guarantee you we're going to get the story about, could they move to the X? And it's going to be, no, that doesn't work.
No, like, I don't see that happening, no.
No, I don't either, but I've seen the movie. Like, we'll get that story. Could they play at the X? Could they share? The X is great. Yeah, so anyway, final scoops before we finish up.
Well, there has been a lot of buzz about the Vikings doing a lot of homework on quarterbacks, including the top tier guys. I'm just starting to wonder, when do the Vikings take a quarterback? I think they do take a quarterback before the month is over, or maybe it's May 1st. Maybe it's rounds 4 through 7, but that they do take a quarterback. They have 7 picks between, pick 78 and pick 157.
Yep.
Now, I don't think they're going to end up keeping all 7 of those picks. So they're going to maneuver up at some point. But when do they take a quarterback? Like, they've done so much work on Franks, the former Florida and Arkansas quarterback, Ian Book, the former Notre Dame quarterback, Mond, the former Texas A&M quarterback, Trask, the former Florida quarterback. Spielman was at North Dakota State Pro Day for Lance. He was at Ohio State Pro Day for Fields. He was at Alabama Pro Day for Mac Jones. Like, they've done so much work on these guys. The Wake Forest kid who went to Georgia but never really was a Bulldog, Jamie Newman. Just look at the draft-eligible quarterbacks. Go up and down the list, and I promise you, the Vikings had healthy representation at the pro days, and they've connected with a lot of those guys for a lengthy virtual interview. Now, it's tougher from my standpoint to really pinpoint who the Vikings love this year because there are no visits. There are no private workouts. So in years past, if you look at the 30 guys or so that the Vikings, brought, whether it was to Winter Park in Eden Prairie or Eagan the last few years, the Vikings end up drafting a lot of those guys. Like, if you look at their current roster, a lot of those guys that they drafted came in for a visit. Not all. And yeah, guys that come in for a visit sometimes have really bad red flags that the Vikings say, okay, all sorts of concerns. He's off our board. But like, it's harder for me to really pinpoint, but I can just tell you, they've done all sorts of work on quarterbacks. They also have connected, for whatever it's worth, a virtual interview with the consensus top left tackle in this draft. The kid from Oregon. Is it Sewell? Is that how we say his last name?
Penei Sewell.
Yeah, Penei Sewell.
Penei Sewell.
So, like, the belief is he's going. I don't know if he goes 5. I don't think anybody can pinpoint what Cincinnati's thinking at 5. They could easily go Jamar Chase, the wide receiver from LSU, at 5. So then Sewell drops. Where does he drop to? Does he go 6, 7, 8, 9? I don't think he gets to 14.
I agree.
I wouldn't necessarily rule out the Vikings going up and getting him.
Interesting. Great stuff, Dukes. We'll talk to you for more scoopage on Thursday, okay?
Absolutely. Can I throw out a couple Gopher basketball notes?
Yep, go ahead.
So they are in on this Western Carolina transfer. Western Carolina just hired a new coach. Last name is Faulkner. Averaged like 16, 17 points a game. Ben Johnson's still looking for a point guard, so Faulkner could potentially fill that role, although a lot of schools are in on Faulkner. Parker Fox, the kid from Matamidi. He's the Northern State Division II transfer, one of the best players in Division II the last couple of years. The Gophers have a great shot to get him. Now, Creighton is pushing hard too, but I can see a scenario where in the near future, Parker Fox does commit to the Gophers. That would be a really, really good get for Ben Johnson. He just got the kid from Irondale High School, a New Hampshire transfer, Sean Sutherland, the other day. So he had been talking to Sean, offered him on Sunday. Sean committed on the spot. I talked to Sean yesterday. So he underwent a pretty serious hip surgery January 7th, hip labrum repair. But he'll be okay by the summer. He's starting to do some stuff on the court. He'll be okay in time for summer workouts. He's more a depth move. He'll play, but he's more like a 7th man, an 8th man. I don't view Sean Sutherland as a starter. But still, nonetheless, the Gophers do get another